And now, please welcome co-founder and chairman of Intrepid Travel, Darrell Wade, in conversation with Skift Asia editor, Peden Bhutia.
Hi, once again. I have Darrell with me. And Darrell, tell me about, you've been in India for what, a little less than 2 decades?
That'd be right. Yeah, I personally started travel in India about 1984, I think. I had about 3 months here. But as a business, yeah, we've been here for about 20 years.
Yeah, and so I went through the Intrepid website, and you have about 40 India tours. And I saw that while you have a lot of those, the whole golden tour, golden triangle tours, you also have these, what they call the off the beaten track tours. One interesting tour was the women's expedition, where you make your travelers travel in the Delhi metro in the women's coach, showing them how the local women travel. So tell us about doing this in the India market, and what's the market for this?
Yeah, so look, India is like any country around the world in that people tend to gravitate to certain icons and certain circuits, the Golden Triangle and so forth in India. But wherever possible, we like to try to break that model and get people into a more diversified kind of range of product. And very often we find people enjoy it more when they're doing something that they don't expect to do and didn't really even know they were signing up for. So in the context of women's only expeditions, it's an interesting one because, to be honest, originally I thought, why are we doing women's only expeditions? That as a guy I kind of thought, oh, that doesn't sit right with me. We should do trips that are inclusive and anyone can do. But actually, after talking to a few people who have done those trips, women get an insight into the local community that simply would not be possible if guys were on that trip. And so, they meet local women, and of course, local women meet female travellers from the West. And so you can really bridge that cultural divide and get mutual understanding, which is great.
On the topic of women travelers, of course, safety is also something that you need to keep in mind, when travelers are coming in. Not just women, everyone, but safety is something that you need to keep in mind. So how is it vis-a-vis India?
Not great.
Of course.
yeah, look, Intrepid operate in about 120 countries around the world, and we have a legal point of presence in about 35 countries in the world. Unfortunately, India is in the top 5 countries where we find there's a relatively high level of harassment for female travellers. So that's incredibly unfortunate. So we have to spend probably a disproportionate amount of time training staff, training supply chains, and training our travellers and making our travellers aware on issues of safety and issues of respect as well.
And so what could the country do to make women travellers feel more secure?
Look, I think it's an all-encompassing issue, and so really it is all about respect and equality and so forth. And so at a high level, it'd be great if state and federal governments got involved in that issue around education and teaching respect and so forth. At an industry level, we need more industry players talking about the issue, making it awareness. I was interested in hearing the US ambassador earlier talking about the importance of safety and how you address it from a government sector perspective. And so that's what we need. It's all stakeholders involved in the issue to lift awareness of the problem and then try to find solutions to that issue.
Darrell, recently Rafat had written in his LinkedIn post quoting the Get Your Guide CEO about the fact that the future of travel is guided. And this would hold true more so for a country like India that's so vast and diverse, where people would be best served through these personalized tours rather than fully independent travel. So what is the opportunity there for companies like Intrepid?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at travel, we kind of look at it as there's kind of 2 parts to organising travel. One is the kind of logistical exercise, let's call it, the joining the dots of hotels and transport and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we see as the kind of almost the hardware of travel. The other side is more around the humanity of travel and you know, to a certain extent, why you travel in the first place. You know, you travel to a new destination because you want to meet people, you want to learn something, you want to engage in the local culture, you want to see something different to what you've got at home. Now, that hardware side of the hotels and transport, I think that's not teaching you anything about the destination. It's the software side, the people exchange, that is teaching you and opening your eyes about what it is you've come to see. And so therefore, whether it's a group tour or FIT arrangements or whatever, it's that human exchange and that human interface that is so valuable to travel. And so, yeah, as Rafat said, you know, we really think there's a new era of that people exchange that's going to add incredible value to tourism going forward.
Yeah, just to quote again that LinkedIn post, I saw that you had commented on it, and if I may quote you, you had said that humanity is the ultimate competitive advantage. Very smart quote, I must say.
I should remember that, shouldn't I? It sounds really smart,
yeah.
Unlike me.
So as travel industry gets more industrial, you know, of course, people will crave for real travel experiences driven by locals and human connection. So do you see more travel companies realizing value in that?
Yeah, look, I think so, and you know, you quote real life experiences there, and that was a kind of a marketing term we were using kind of 15 years ago, and it's almost come a part of industry parlance now that people really see the value of experience, but it's not just an experience in terms of doing something, it's experience in terms of that human exchange and that meaningful connection point. And you know, I think in the era of social media and artificial intelligence and even political division, people are getting more and more divided. And yet the power of travel is actually to bring people together and have that exchange and that learning. And, you know, there's an incredible value that tourism can bring to society as a whole through that power of human connection.
Yeah, and as you know, as we realize the power of human connections, you know, of course, we are going to talk about climate change as well. So when somebody is handling, you know, something like climate change, of course, the travel industry is becoming more aware of this, and
are we?
I think some of you, Intrepid definitely.
Hey, at the risk of interviewing you, I'm not sure you're right on that.
Yeah. So as travel companies are becoming more aware, I said more aware, not doing something about it, but definitely becoming more aware of it. What role do you see, you know, tour guides who are at the front line of travel? I ask you this because you know, we've done at Skift, we've done 2 trips with Intrepid, the Iceland and Morocco, and I see that your tour guides are very different from what we usually would expect from tour guides. So what role do tour guides play in climate change?
Look, I think our leaders are important in terms of continuing that conversation around climate change and discussing why it is we make certain decisions we make on the ground as a part of our programs. And that's a really valuable exchange that we can do. But I think let's kind of, in the context of climate change, we've got to helicopter right back up and say, well, where is our industry at the moment? And, you know, to be perfectly blunt, I'm a little bit disappointed today that we've had lots of conversations about the power of the travel industry and the size of the travel industry, and in the context of India, the growth that is going to happen of the travel industry in the next 5 to 10 years. And we all see the opportunity there. Unfortunately, with the growth of the travel industry, there's one thing that's also going to happen, and that's carbon emissions are going to continue to rise. So as an industry, we are going to outweigh our contribution to climate change. And that's an unfortunate reality, and it's an uncomfortable reality. But if you look at it today, the travel and tourism industry accounts for about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The automobile industry and transport industry is really starting to get to an age where now battery-based cars will be replacing cars, already 50% in China, 25% in Europe. So that level of greenhouse gas emissions is falling. Ditto, other sectors like power generation, coal is no longer the thing, renewable energies is rapidly replacing coal. You look at the travel and tourism industry, and that is not happening. Global aviation is growing, so that what we're saying, and shipping is growing, and various other things are growing. So what we're going to be presented with a problem is that in 5 to 10 years' time, what is now 10.2% of global greenhouse gas emissions is probably going to get closer to 20%. So apart from the fact that we shouldn't feel very comfortable with that, it also risks the travel and tourism industry becoming a bit of a global pariah in terms of climate change. That's not a good place for us to be.
Yeah, but like in the sense that, you know, I've read a lot of reports talking about there is the intent from the traveler, but when the traveler has to pay $100 extra for a ticket from Delhi to New York, I would think that they would go for the one that's lesser, right?
That's quite possibly true if you tell them they're paying $100. Dare I say it, you probably can't tell them, because if you give them the option, they won't do it. But maybe it has to be built in through carbon taxes and so forth, so that they then pay for an air ticket that happens to have $100 attached to it, but they're going to pay for the air ticket anyway because they want to go somewhere. And so you decarbonise through that route. And just a bit of Intrepid experience here, we've been on this journey for a long time, and so in 2005, that's how old we are, we made the decision to decarbonise our business and specifically become carbon neutral. Next 5 years, we took to work out how to do it. By 2010, we got audited as carbon neutral. About 2017, we decided that wasn't enough and we had to actively decarbonise, signed up to science-based targets. Through that journey, and so all of that is relatively expensive. It doesn't come for nothing. And so ultimately, we've put that cost into our trip price. Some of our staff were really worried about that because you know, the trip price would be a little bit higher than it would be otherwise. The fact is, I think we're something like 8 times bigger than we were in 2005. Our profitability is probably 15 times what it was in 2005. So it hasn't hurt us at all. So I think sometimes we worry about the cost of doing things and don't recognise the cost of not doing things. And so we've really just got to get on board and make it happen. Stop talking about it.
So you can be conscious and then still do good business,
Totally,
right?
absolutely. You know, we find the more we invest in purpose-based initiatives, whether that's donation to the Intrepid Foundation or decarbonisation or gender equality or human rights campaigns or whatever it is, the more we do that, the more the customers get on board. So that means the more sales we make, the more profit we make, which means that more we can invest in purpose. And so there's just this beautiful virtuous circle that has worked for us well. And I look, it's not just us, I look at other companies who start investing in more purpose-based initiatives, and they see the same thing. You know, customers are aware, they do vote with their wallets, and they go to companies that stand for something.
Coming back to your tours in India, I know that you cater to the inbound customer, you know, inbound inbound customers coming into India. But India, as you know, is a domestic travel market story. So do you see, and Intrepid has your 2030 plan, you have backyard tours as well. So do you think, do you see Intrepid playing a part in the modern Indian domestic traveler?
Yeah, so I think we do, yes. And so, as you're saying, yesterday we spent all day with our staff here in India and then separate sessions with our management team in India. And we were looking at the 4 major projects that we're launching between now and 2030 and just working through where the priorities should be in the context of India. And so we do this exercise in all 35 offices around the world. And so at the moment we're thinking that yes, we do want to instigate Project Backyard, as you call it, in India. However, there's lower hanging fruit for us. And so we probably won't be looking at it for the next 2 or 3 years, but by 2030 we definitely will be.
So you will see Intrepid competing in the domestic travel space as well?
We tend to not worry too much about competition. We do what we do and hopefully people like what we do and that seems to happen. You know, our compound average growth rate is about 25% a year, has been since year dot. So we will continue to grow and people will find, you know, the products and services we do and latch onto that. And so we think that will be probably right. But kind of to your point, we've got to make sure that we can create a product in the context of India and domestic tourism in India that people actually want to take. And how can we find a competitive advantage and a unique value proposition in India that others can't do. Now, right here today, I'm not sure what that is, and that will take a while for us to work through how we present a product that really actually is different and is value adding and others aren't doing or can't do or whatever it is.
Correct. On the topic of the modern Indian traveler, you know, we've had so many discussions about India being the new China, about how the next billion travelers are going to come from India. But from a climate change point of view, do you think the world can afford the next billion travelers coming from India?
Probably not. You know, we can't afford, whether they're coming from India or whether they're coming from anywhere else in the world, we probably can't. And so, you know, this is a real issue. And, you know, until we get sustainable aviation fuel available en masse, now like we're hoping to get to the industry 10% by 2030. If that happens, there's probably a weight of production that will continue. And so then we can, absolutely. But right here today, we cannot afford it, no.
So even if we can't afford it, but if people want to travel, they will travel. And we know that especially post-COVID, right?
That's right.
So what can travel companies like yours do to, you know, make it, to ease the pain?
Well, first of all, I think it's not a case of easing the pain. I think it's actually taking action to do it. And so it's working with your supply chain, working with your hoteliers on getting renewable energy into their buildings. It's working with EV manufacturers to have EVs on trips, EV buses. I was in Vietnam 2 days ago, and we were talking to VinFast, which is a manufacturer of electric buses, and we're talking about getting those into the country instead of gasoline-powered or diesel-powered buses. So those kind of conversations got to happen. Now, again, I go back to this issue that's expensive, and being a first mover sometimes is a bit more expensive. However, the other side that kind of isn't costed is that if customers come into a bus and it's an EV bus, they'll think, wow, I've never been in one of these before. We're now operating EVs as part of our transfer fleet for airport transfers in various parts of the world. And again, a lot of people still have never been in an EV. And so they're saying, oh, wow, this is pretty interesting, isn't it? And
that's another experience.
So it's another experience, that's right. And so then they kind of start to say, oh, I went in an EV, that was because of Intrepid. These guys are pretty cool. Hard to cost that. But we know that comes back in repeat travel, and it's good for your brand.
Yeah, the future looks good then. I
Yeah.
think we are trying, we're making an effort. Darrell, you have been integrating accommodations into your products. You know, like you've tried that in Australia and in some parts in Morocco as well. And of course, you know, we know that every travel company is now talking about the connected trip strategy.
Yep.
While you do use other hotels here, do you see doing that in other markets, especially in India?
Yes, we do. And so again, this 2030 strategy, we are going to build out an accommodation strategy as part of that.
So you are going to buy hotels and own hotels?
Buying, leasing, whatever it is. And so we've identified 5 areas of accommodation that we're particularly interested in exploring. And so, for instance, we've got a small hotel in Vietnam that we take on a permanent lease basis, and we're instigating some of the supply chain management into that hotel so that we can use that as a best practice case. It also is financially well worthwhile for us. In other cases, like was on screen before, where we've bought an eco lodge in Australia, which we're looking at working through and modelling up and seeing how we can roll those out in Australia, but potentially India, America, other parts of the world. So yeah, we already buy well over 1 million nights of room nights a year. And so we just say, a lot of those room nights, to be perfectly frank, are not particularly interesting. They're not particularly engaging for our travellers. Where are the options to look at things that will get a client better connected into the local community, into the destination they are, really give them that sense of place about being excited. And so in the context of India, we see a lot of potential. In fact, I was having a meeting at lunch with a chap about creating something between a homestay and a lodge and a network of these across India, because it would give the traveller a new experience, but it would also give a real opportunity to local communities to engage in tourism in a meaningful way that they perhaps haven't got at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Darrell. There's so much to look forward to in terms of Intrepid doing what it's in India. And I hope that you buy some nice property, and we hope to see an Intrepid property very soon in India.
There's a bit of fun to be had.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Peden.
you.